Back at it again. Take two. Another day for my quick project. We got some parts. So, went and picked up accelerator pump diaphragm, and while I was there, got some extra return springs since this thing keeps getting stuck in that really high RPM. You can tell by the box that this is nice and brand new. It's basically an antique, but it was $3 at Advance Auto Parts, and it's from 2000, so it's only 23 years old, which I'm sure is older than the one that's in it. But it hasn't seen any ethanol fuel, so it should do us for a while. Long enough to get this thing back on the road, going, kicking, and like I said, eventually at some point, we're going 4-barrel anyway. This is more of like a long-term temporary thing, we'll call it. Basically, I want to get her back on the road, and we're going to drive it just like this until really there's something that necessitates tearing into it again, and then we're going full 4-barrel. So for now, we just need to get it going. That accelerator pump should fix our problem we had the other day. I'll get some of those springs, figure out what size we need where, and get that going. And we should be good as far as carb work at that point. Once that's all said and done, then I'm going to go ahead and back this thing out into the driveway. We got to put it up on ramps and start doing that transmission pan. And that's going to be a nice, fun, smelly job. But somebody's got to do it. All right, got you in there, I think at a pretty good little angle. We're going to try and do this without blocking the light for ourselves and for you guys. Nice thing with these fancy eBay distributors is that they're really pretty easy. Actually, we'll go flathead on these to take off because it's just spring loaded instead of actual screws holding these caps down. So all you really got to do is just move them where those little tangs are off to the side. And it just lifts away. And we're just going to kind of tuck it. That's a pretty good little angle. Once you stop shaking a little there. There we go. Okay, so that diaphragm sits right in here. So what we're going to do is... These are all flathead. It was the other one that had the Phillips on it, the other carb that we robbed parts from. This one all being the same, we'll make it a little easier. So we're just going to crack these loose. I'm going to go ahead and take off the ones that hold this little arm assembly first, because that'll help take some spring pressure off. There are, interestingly enough, in that kit, 2 different size rods, I guess you call them, for the diaphragm. There must be a different application for a slightly different carb that requires a shorter distance, like a shorter throw to push it in. This one is the longer one. I assume that that is correct. So we're going to go back in with the longer one. So old diaphragm pulls out. You don't want to lose this spring. You want to hang on to him. Grab our new one here. Well, new to us from 23 years ago. And let's see what we got. This other brass piece is going to push on this one. So I guess what we'll need to do is put this in put this in here to hold it in place. And we'll put our spring back in. Make sure it's good and clean. Use the shirt rag for that. And we'll just drop it on the ground. That's nice. There she is. We'll edit that out in post, huh? Wipe it down with the old shirt rag again. Again. So this spring sits in this outer lip here. It goes on the inner of this. This is going to sit over top of it like so. We're going to put it back in opposite of how we took it off. We're going to put in the 2 screws that weren't holding anything extra because it'll be easier to get it initially seated. Just going to finger tighten them to start. Make sure they go. Run it down a little. We're just going to go snug. We're not going to go wrenching on it because we still got to do the other side. And it may need to move a little, but I don't want it to come loose and shift that spring out of alignment or anything. That seems good. And this guy just goes in behind here. Boom, like so. You don't want to go nuts on these. They're not very crazy thread pitch screws. They're not real strong. It's not holding a whole lot either. So we're going to give it like a 1/4 UGA, you know. Make sure you calibrate your torque screwdriver for that. Boom, installed. You can see right here that little assembly we took off. We were looking at that spring, just when it moves and gets pushed in, pushes that little nub right there. All right, so that's back in. Everything else in the carb is already tight. We need to go ahead and put our distributor cap back in. Make sure it's clean in here. Everything looks good in there. This old cheapo HEI, but rotor button looks good. Contacts are clean. There's really not much to speak of for corrosion in there. I don't feel anything gritty on them. They don't look bad. They are copper contact, which is cool. These little levers just spin around and lock her in. All right, that's done. We're back together. We're reinstalled. Distributor cap is in place and proper. I'm not going to mess with timing yet. That'll be after we get the transmission all squared away. Give her a whirl, I suppose. Everything seems free and clear and out of the way. Go ahead and open the garage door. For one pump. Iron hole. Look at all that transmission fluid. Again, smells smoky, but she hadn't run in a while, so I'm not super surprised at that. So you've seen this process a time or two before, so I'll spare you the expense. But went to my random oddball tool drawer, pulled out my vac gauge, got a little nub screwdriver and some coffee, and I'm gonna go ahead and let this thing warm up, throw this on it. We're gonna finally tune that carb, see how good we can get it, dial in our idle mixture screws. There's 2 on this because it's 2-barrel carb. Once we get those dialed in, I'm gonna adjust our RPM. That'll be our baseline. Then I think I'm gonna redirect my plans. I was gonna do the transmission next, but honestly, it doesn't make sense to get the thing all tuned up and then go in and change timing later. We're gonna try and do that now. Get that distributor unstuck. I will show you that. And then double check everything once we get our timing right. This one, I'm probably gonna try and get it to about 10 degrees advanced is my goal. I think baseline on these is 0, but I've had several and I know that you could give them a little bit of advance. They really wake up, especially on one like this that has almost no emission stuff left. So we're gonna give it a whirl and then see how she sounds then. All right, so this thing's been fighting me tooth and nail. I got the carb as tuned as I can get it. Something is going on crazy wrong with that thing, because even with the idle mixture screws turned off, it runs best with the idle mixture screws turned all the way in, which it shouldn't run at all that way. And if I put my hand over top of the choke plate, it actually idles up and runs better. So it's obviously got some issues. It's pulling way too much air. Maybe there's a vacuum leak somewhere. I think it's actually from the middle of that shaft that runs through the butterflies are on the carb. So I just got it to go as good as I could. I've got it tuned in actually pretty well though, surprisingly, for as jacked up as all of the measurements and everything really and base adjustments are. It's running good. It fires up, it idles good, it's got good power. I did get the a pair of vice grips on the base of that distributor on the stem and was able to work it loose and get that brought back just a little bit. It was actually a little too advanced, so I brought it down just a touch. Seems like it's running actually really well right now. As well as it's going to with this worn out 2-barrel carb that I rebuilt with minimal parts. Now we're going to go ahead and jump underneath. We're going to pull this old transmission drain pan down, drain the fluid, and put our new pan and gasket in so this thing will actually seal and we won't have to add transmission fluid like gasoline. So we'll bring you under here so you can see. Little leak. Power steering pump dripping down onto the oil filter. That needs to be addressed. I have a rebuild kit for that pump, but I'll probably just replace the whole pump. Fuel pump, brand new. That's nice. Shocks look like they're originals from 1977, so that's on the list. Moving back, we got oil drain pan leaks. We got valve cover leak up there. I think that's most of this is from that rear of that valve cover, and that's also what's smoking. It's dripping down onto the exhaust. So that will need to be changed out. I'll do that when we do the intake manifold swap, which is looking more like sooner rather than later. And here's our culprit, this transmission pan. You can see it's actually kind of concaved a little bit. It's probably been banged on some stuff. It's definitely not flat on that sealing surface. And even snugging all those bolts up as much as you can without further warping it, it just drips. You can see it all the way around is wet. So especially back in here, this back corner, the whole mount and everything is saturated from this back corner leaking. So we're going to go ahead and take this thing out, wipe everything down, and when we put it back together, it's getting a brand new pan and a brand new gasket. Look at that fancy exhaust job I did. That's super nice, right? About bending this pan because it's not going back. I would not be that aggressive with it if I were you, if you were trying to keep it. And down. Matter if it had a new gasket on it or not. It was gonna leak no matter what. Pulling this old felt gasket off. We're gonna have to get this with a wire brush, make sure there's nothing left behind. Wipe it down real good. Gasket. Alright, got our new pan ready to go in. I went ahead and just stuck 3 bolts in it just to help me get it started. We're gonna get our socket ready. Put them in by hand first. Alright, over to position. Get this one started, and then let's get that one started, and that one started. So we got the new pan on, tight, installed. I'm going to go ahead and yank our trans dipstick. Find a stool, a funnel, and some fluid. Cautious of what we fill it with on the first first jug, we know it's going to take more than one of these. So let's get started. So this one's not a Type F. They changed it. Actually, the year before this model, they changed it allegedly in around 76. Early 77 was the changeover. This one, I looked it up, and the stick does say Mercon. It's not Type F. So I just got the cheap O'Reilly's premium transmission fluid, which does specifically say for standard Mercon. So that's what we're running with. They had other ones that were Mercon 5, but technically, I guess that would work. I don't like even going above what it calls for necessarily if it doesn't list the earlier one, the predecessor, and this is the only one that actually said Mercon without any kind of numeral after it. So that's how I made my choice. Check underneath, make sure it's not seeping out anywhere. Pan looks great and dry. We're going to let it sit for a minute. I'm going to crawl back underneath, check, make sure that it's not leaking from around any of the bolts, anything like that. Should be good though. And then once that's done, I'm going to fire it up, row it through the gears, and then check the fluid level again. Pull the chocks out, bring it back down level, because you can't really check it accurately on an incline like this. Fire it up, let her warm up.